Jono is a regenerative agriculture coach who used to work with fully conventional, intensive farming and agronomy. After taking an opportunity to manage a large, organic, mixed cropping, sheep and beef farm, Jono hit the wall. He created Quorum Sense and then Natural Performance Limited, and is now committed to educating and leading people to reach new levels of profitability, resilience, joy and peace of mind. He believes that the regenerative approach not only impacts areas on the farm, but improves the quality of life. Jono.
Okay, can you hear me up there? Yeah. Let's get out of that light. Right, how's our brains coping? Pretty good. Yeah, getting pretty full. Lots of information. Bit of a tactic there, trying to wake you guys up. Alright, so my journey, as you heard just then, I started off, let's go back a step. When I was 11 years old, I was introduced to a young fella. He was my neighbour, and he really annoyed me. He was a really energetic guy. and he was really excited about what he was doing, which he was working on a dairy farm down the road. And I sort of thought, well, I'd like to get a bit of a taste of that. And at the time I was living with my mother, as you do at 11, and my stepfather, who was a agricultural contractor where we specialised in sheep dipping and chemical application, as did my father, and he was a pioneer in his day, a real pioneer. So anyway, it wasn't really of that much interest to me, although I did enjoy waking up in the middle of the Mackenzie country as a child in the back of a sheep dipping truck, where I used to go and greet the beardy dog, shaking off the drench all over me. But I thought I'd give this dairy farming thing a go, which my neighbour was really interested in doing. So I went down to the place that he worked on, and they were really cool and kind, and it turned out they'd sort of met my mother at the pub before, and they all enjoyed Karuba, and anyway, we sort of halfway knew each other, and they took me under their wing at 11 years old. I was a short 11, I was down here like this, and I was milking cows under the kick rail like this, and Mum was too scared to come into the cow shed, thankfully, because if she had seen that, she wouldn't have allowed me to milk the cows, but I never got a kick to the face, which was good. Anyway, I carried through my school life, went to St. Kevin's College in Oamaru, where at that stage I developed a rather unhealthy obsession with dairy farming. And so in the school that I went to, people soon got sick of me talking about cows and farming and motorbikes and all that stuff. And I felt somewhat, I guess you could say, outcasted, and that showed in my disruptive behaviour within the school. I was actually reading just yesterday an article that was actually a letter that was sent to my mum where I was banned from the library for flipping a table, but that's what happens when you're bored and you don't feel like you fit in. Let's see where the slide goes. Oh, this was last year. Steve Ratham was where I stood. I don't know if anyone was here, but I was right up there, and I had a lot to say. And Steve was like, man, you need to be down here. And then he soon said, but that's enough of the cackle, can you please sit down? So I just want to say, Steve, I made it, man, I'm down here. So yeah, grew up in that, I guess this goes back to my childhood. This is my stepfather, Mark. You can see those sheep had been in the sheep dip. They'll be covered in all sorts of lovely stuff. He will be wearing shorts there. The only time I've seen him wearing pants was the day he married my mother. And this is me with my son Bo, and that photo doesn't excite me. I'm driving a spray truck there. That's my overalls covered in all sorts of lovely stuff. But as when you're stuck in something, you just don't see it as wrong. A bit like what Hamish said about the soil that he was, how he used to graze his animals over winter. You just see it as normal. And this sort of carries on. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. I was the fish that couldn't climb the tree. Thankfully I found myself an ocean to swim in, which is regenerative agriculture, but it just goes to show, and this sort of resembles our education system within agriculture as well. So really, one size does not fit all. A lot of the information that's been developed in this very campus has been based on reasonably linear, reasonably reductionist models, and when you open the Lincoln Technical Farm Manual, it sort of represents that. So yeah, one size definitely does not fit all, find what works for you. So yeah, went through my life, got really interested in dairy farming, got really good at it too, so I was top 5% production in my years of management with Fonterra. Everything was, you know, utilisation, leave behind nothing, get the quality, that also ridiculously man-made concept. And then I went into chemical agronomy and sort of followed my father and grandfather's footsteps. This photo here sort of indicated that what I thought was, you know, lovely, lush cereal, all uniform and even. This one here, I used to love the straight lines. Nature doesn't do straight lines. Look at that, GPS, bang on the money. Can anyone see that? So I was driving that, and where the seat stops there is my chest. And if that wasn't a sign that, hey, you know, it's a bit like we get through our lives, we keep going, we get caught in focusing what's right in front of us. Meanwhile, there's a 100-foot turbo around heading for us and we don't see it. And that went through my cab and out the other side. It should have got me and impaled me through the chest, but it got me in the head. I managed to make it to the road before collapsing. I lost a lot of blood, but that was an interesting experience. So this is what we used to, you know, we like this in agriculture. We like uniformity, we like clean, we like even. I sort of look at that now like, ugh, it's just a bit hideous. It's a bit like having 100 Jonos in a room. It wouldn't be that bloody productive. So this is what I see as beauty now. And so, you know, I just want to point this presentation, and this is my first ever presentation with a PowerPoint. I feel quite fancy with this thing here. Look at it. Anyway, so it really does come down to what you see. You know, you've all heard that term or that little saying is, if you want to make small changes, change the way you do things. If you want to make big changes, change the way you see things. So I think it was Walter that talked about the grief moments that you come to. I had one where after 10 years of trying to make that system work and working like a dog to try and avoid, I don't know what it was like really competitive and really like nothing I did was enough. I don't know if anyone here can relate to that, but like in my realm or my paradigm of farming was like you had to be the best all the time. And anything that was sub to that, I couldn't relax. I used to smoke cannabis to sleep at night. And then one day I got the most profound opportunity to, I went from driving the sprayer. I had a most wonderful man, Tim Chamberlain, approached me as I was driving that sprayer. He'd met me just a few times prior. And he asked me to manage his 200-hectare mixed cropping sheep and beef farm. It was the most weirdest thing. Who goes to a spraying contractor and asks them to manage their organic farm? But I took it, something just lit up inside me like this was something that I needed to do. And in all my years of doing this stuff, although I felt like the man and I'd walk around like I was the man, deep down inside I thought that there was something just not quite right about what I was doing. I remember using, who knows the product Lawsban here? Who's used a bit of Lawsban? We're at the ODPG, I don't know how many of you have. It's a really nasty organophosphate. It's a really yucky insecticide, kills everything. And it's also an emulsifiable concentrate, so its formulation in itself is quite nasty. I used to clean out the booms of the old man's sprayer. And that stuff, it's almost like a solvent, it goes right through your skin. And I remember feeling quite nauseous and yuck. But of course, we're too proud to talk about that stuff, so you just sort of carry on. But I remember one day saying to the old man, I said, you know, do you think we should be wearing gloves? And he said, don't be silly, that stuff only kills insects. To this day, he's out there wearing shorts, spraying all around this district. But look, it just, something wasn't quite right. And when this opportunity came up that Tim gave me, I jumped on it. It was a big drop in wages, but I took it. I was earning good money here. And it was really interesting. Like, Tim was playing with stuff like, planting 10-way mixes under cereals. And I was like, isn't that going to take away the yield? And then what I observed was it actually increased yield, and then after harvest we had 3 or 4 tonne of pasture grades. It was like, holy moly, why aren't we getting taught this stuff? And all these things, like my obsession with looking good, so I'd like to mow the roadsides all the time, you know, everything had to be, it was really hard for me not to get, you know, I didn't have the option to get the Roundup out and spray the fence lines. That was really hard to let go of it. I wanted to be perfect, I wanted everything to look good, and it was really hard work. And then, yeah, one day my wife and children moved away after 10 years, and that was sort of my brief moment, I guess you could say. I'd done the damage by working like a dog all those years, and really, you know, it took me away from being present with my family when I got home at night. So, you know, you sort of get home at night, you've got all this stuff to do, and in this competitive space, it was like nothing was ever good enough. So I'd sit down, I was there, my kids would be running up to me, and, you know, I was just not even home. I remember the day my son was born, so I was out on that machine there, actually just next door to that property there, and I was spraying a paddock out. My wife rings up, she's going into labour, and I finished the paddock. I couldn't bear not to finish the paddock. I couldn't bear to let down my client. And so when I got home, took my wife into, my then wife into, we're going to go to town to the midwife, and we made it to Springston, just down the road here, and she was pushing. And so we drove to Lincoln Maternity Ward, and our son was born 3 minutes after arrival. So it just goes to show, like, I was so caught up in it that I just couldn't see life going on around me, a bit like that turbo rain. And then I began to see, after that, the power of diversity, and I shifted really what I viewed as beauty. So, you know, I went from seeing that as beauty to this as beauty. And then I started to see things like, you know, this is my son Bo, he's pointing at that flower there. You know, when you're a child, all this stuff's really amazing. And then something happens in life, and all of a sudden we get caught up in society's rat race, and all of a sudden it's a great big competition. We forget life going on around us, and we've got this goal, and we can see it, it's like the top of the mountain, but what we're not seeing is the track to get there. We're so focused on the end game. And at this stage, after sort of being confronted with what am I going to do with my life now, I'm not going to go and own a farm on my own, so I decided to, I started a little group. I rang Simon Osborne and Nigel Greenwood, of which you guys have heard speak this morning, and said, what do you guys reckon about getting a wee group going? I've just been speaking to Tim Chamberlain's father about the impact a little small 6-man discussion group had on him as a young farmer. And so I thought, right, let's give it a go, you know, and Nigel and Simon were just, you know, they were just so keen. And we started this thing called Quorum Sense, and it's become quite a beast. It's a group of farmers. We're also sort of supported and validated by some academics, some in this room, and what we found was embracing that diversity. And look, one of the things I made clear in the very onset of starting up this group was that every single comment was valid. You know, it requires everyone to bring in their own views and inputs, because there's things that we don't see that others do. And if we can express that and communicate that, we've been able to achieve quite a lot in a very short period of time. So diversity is key. I've heard a lot of talking about, you know, the negatives of what's going on, and this dead horse theory is it's quite cool. So the tribal wisdom of the Dakota Indians, passed on from generation to generation, says that when you discover that you're riding a dead horse, the best strategy is to dismount. Instead, in modern business, education and government, a whole range of far more advanced strategies often employed, such as buying a stronger whip, changing riders, threatening a horse with termination, appointing a committee to study the horse, arranging to visit other countries to see how others are riding dead horses, lowering the standards so that a dead horse can be included, reclassifying the dead horse as living impaired, hiring outstanding contractors, outside contractors, to ride the dead horse, harnessing several dead horses together to increase the speed. That reminds me of, you know, we're all interested in getting bigger, rather than focusing on what we've got. Providing additional funding and or training to increase the dead horse's performance. And it goes on. And I just wanted to point out this too, that, you know, I grew up seeing that in all of the fert bins and sheds that I loaded out. I've also spent some time doing aerial stuff, spraying fert all over the countryside. And we used to just not blink an eyelid at that stuff. You know, who's seen fert trucks and bins just rusting? That's galvanised iron. That's synthetic fertiliser. Look at that. I used to think that was normal. That was just 2 weeks ago. I took that photo and I was just like, what? We're putting that in our soil to grow the food that we eat? Anyway, so this presentation, I'm not going to add too much of the information you guys have already been heard, listening to today and yesterday, because I believe everyone's covered things very well. What I want to instead offer is sort of a space or possibly looking into a different paradigm or a box from which you like to put all that information. Because you all know, for instance, we all know things, right? I know how to do a cartwheel. I think that was a cartwheel. And we know what we don't. We know that we don't know things like I don't know how to fly a jet plane, and I know that I don't know that. And when we have a question, the answer's pretty clear, right? Like we have a question, we don't know something, so we go and know it. The space that I like to hang out is over here, is what we don't know, and how I like to access that is by, instead of looking for the answers all the time, and I want all you guys to do this for yourselves. It'd be the only piece of notebook stuff I'd like you to do while I speak, is get yourself a question from which you guys are going to leave this and get into life with. So a question, what I mean by that is, rather than a question that you're going to answer, it's a bit like creating a question, and for me it's like, how do we create a world that works, that aligns with nature? And it's a question that cannot be answered. But every day I wake with that question, all of a sudden there's all this room, there's all this space, there's all this validity, there's all this area that I can just explore and create. And it's a bit awkward because we like answers. We've all been brought up, we like answers, we like to know. We like to let others know that we know. I'm probably the only farm advisor out there that's openly, professing that really, I just don't know. I'm just, there's stuff that I know for sure, but I like to be open and let others know that I'm open to learning, and I'm learning every day. I was sitting up in the Burns building that's over there this week with Steve Ratton, and he asked what my credentials were, what have I studied? I said nothing. He said, well, you're a scholar of life, and I quite like that. So what's a question you guys are going to leave this building with today? Write it down, please. It's a really profound exercise. A question that you're going to go out into your day-to-day life with the basis of this question. A question that can't be answered with one answer. Okay, what's important for me in my transition is openness, willingness. You've really got to want things to work, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So willingness, openness, diversity. So everyone's talking about diversity. Diversity of people, what I found to be so profound within Quorum Sense, and that's why we called it Quorum Sense, a derivative of quorum sensing. If you guys aren't aware of that phenomenon, it's a phenomenon that when a certain level of expressive diversity gets to a threshold where gene expression, molecules start firing, things start coming from that expression that would never have happened before. And it requires diversity, all these different viewpoints coming in. Everyone is valid. Sharing, you guys need to share. When I was farming, I was like, this is my information. I wasn't keen to share. I wanted to win. I wanted to be better than everyone. And it was hideous. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't relax. I couldn't be with my children. Support. Let's support each other. Imagine if microbes got up in the morning. I don't feel like supporting that microbe. I'm not going to, look, I've got an intention. I'd like to mobilise some phosphorus, but I might just, the timing's not right. The world does not care for your intentions. Self-expression and offence. Who thought Hamish was pretty sweet up here before? He was getting his jiggy on. That's expression. We need that. Microbes don't limit their self-expression. A lot of people will die with things that haven't been said. You must express what it is that's there for you. Authenticity, compassion, and I mean real compassion. Trust, responsibility, and all the love in the world. To me, that's the big one. If we go out into life with all this information, because we've got a lot of it, and we're all able, if we bring all the love in the world to what we do, and it's sort of like, I liked what Graham Sate said the other week when we got the privilege to hang out with Graham Sate and Nicole Masters, was he said everything that you do in life and on your operations, you ask the question, would nature approve of this? And man, it's been hard for me. I'm in the Macca's drive-through like, I start to now see things because I'm open. My heart rate has dropped 15 beats per minute. I'm able to connect and be present with people because I'm not caught up in the rat race. This is my son Bo and my daughter Harbour. She's gorgeous, trust me. The things that I see in my children now that before, when I was too busy and caught up in the rat race of farming and competitive farming and righteousness and all that junk, pride, all that stuff, there was things I missed out in my children. You know, they say to you, kids grow up fast, and man, they do. So you better get present to them, because these guys are important. I now have a relationship with my children that's more impactful with 2 days a fortnight than I ever did with them with me full time when I was contracting and farming. It's the coolest thing. In regenerative agriculture, we no longer see problems anymore, we see opportunities. I quite like this one. I'm mindful that we are getting on a bit beyond our time frame, and I'm committed to perhaps shrinking this up a little bit. Oh yeah, look at this one. This is quite cool, eh? I was the horse. That's the truth. You get yourself out of the way, guys, it's amazing what you can achieve. There's times where I wake up in the morning, for instance, recently I've got a client, I've got 5,000 cows. We've planted out some crazy diversity. There's, 21, 22 species, of which actually I might mention that stuff was planted the last week in November this year. Irrigated, no fertiliser, we put a bit of trichoderma down. 2 weeks ago it was tested for dry matter. It came in at 10,400 kilograms per hectare of dry matter. That was planted the last week in November. It equaled a cost of 4.4 cents per kilogram of dry matter, and it grew on average 114 kilograms of dry matter per day. That was pretty cool. And then we come in with $20 million worth of stock and grazed it, and there's flowering brassicas in there, and people are saying to me, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "Oh God, can they not?" We're doing it anyway. So a lot of the time, what's in the way is just yourself. Get that chair off and get cranking. Okay, so I really like this one, and I'm just gonna park it here. So today, guys, I really want everyone, like I said, to create a question for themselves of which to leave with all of this fantastic information today, because the information that added to the existing paradigm doesn't actually fit. A lot of it's contradictory, so you guys need to create a new box to add this information to, and then it's sort of a bit more usable. And I go back to when I talk about validity. Every single point is valid. Even Ravensdown's point, it's up to you whether you want to choose to believe it or not. But to disagree with something just takes you away from the actions that need to take place. So everything's valid, take it all in, you choose what you're going to use to go forward with. In my sort of shift to this stuff, I've started to see things that I never used to see before, and I've started to have a lot of feelings that I never used to feel before, and I'm okay with them now. Before I was, that tough man. I used to keep people at distance from me as not to let myself be vulnerable. Now I can let myself be vulnerable out there in the world. I'm learning all the time, and what I'm finding is things are coming to my mind when I say things, and sometimes I say things and I do the verbal vomit thing really well, and this is why this thing's cool, because I've sort of got to stick to a structure. But I'm having a crack. But what I find is I say things and people come to me like, "Wow, that was really amazing." And I'm like, "What did I say?" And so I've started writing some things down. I've actually started dabbling in a bit of poetry. Who would like to hear a little poem I wrote that sort of sums things up? I wrote it last week. Who would like to hear that? Yes. Okay, all right. So I'll leave you guys with a poem, and I get that, there's not much tangible that comes from what I had to say, but hopefully it's been of some value to you. Okay, I label this poem, or whatever this is, "We Are Nature." For centuries, we have developed beliefs, strategies, and technology to control and cash in on Mother Nature's seemingly endless resources. All the while, she adapts. Whether we realise it or not, she is always one step ahead. We destroy, she creates. We simplify, she diversifies. Her complexity and power defies our logic. She always has a plan. When I declared to myself that I am nature, an overwhelming sense of clarity, purpose, connection, and belonging swept over me. I became part of something truly magical and mighty. Something far bigger than this bag of bustling biology and significance. Immediately, I am called into action to take a bold stand for the world and all its beauty within. Imagine if we surrendered the fear of failing. Imagine if we gave up the desire to win, because really, there is no such thing. Imagine it. Everybody contributing selflessly to the greater good. No more looking good. No more significance. No more division. My heart swells. My eyes burn. A world bursting with abundance, acceptance, resilience, purpose, diversity, prosperity, vulnerability, health, wonder, joy, and love. What would that be like? Daily, I wake with this dream so vivid, I need not remind myself of what there is to do. I smile, like a child in spring. A world where we allow nature to take care of us. She wants us all to thrive. She can see the love suppressed inside us all. It's time to let that love shine. As bright as the rising sun in summer. As real as the wind on your face. As vivid as black on white. It's time, don't you think?
Mine isn't so much of a question, but it's a congratulations to yourself and Hamish and the other young guys that are taking up what us as, or we've turned organic, but we started where you were, and your enthusiasm is fantastic. Just keep it up. Congratulations, guys. Great.
Also not a question, so I'm ruining this. I was told something recently which this brings to mind, which is there are no ends, there are only means. And as somebody who is an A-type personality, always looking for this end point, I have to really appreciate Quorum Sense with your not placing an end goal. It is the means that is the most important in bringing us all together in this.
Yeah, goals can be quite limiting.
What do you say to people who say regenerative agriculture is rubbish and we're doing it anyway?
I say, look, I really get that, and here's my experience of what you have to say, and I'll go into whatever their context is or what they're dealing with, what's relatable to them. Yeah, most people, you can't get down on these guys, they just don't understand. If they don't know something, there's no point, trying to defend your stance. You need to have them understand. And doing so, as I said, before the love in the world, and I guess I'm quite lucky because I've been through the transition myself, so it's not polarising, so I can sort of understand, but it's really about listening, getting that dealt with. Once they've been heard, there's no defence, you come in with your thing.